Hello and welcome back to another edition of Yappin' About Sports. Today will be Monday, August 3rd, 2026, after a weekend sweep for the Detroit Tigers over the Sacramento Athletics in Sacramento this weekend. And they didn't look like a distracted team at all today. Easy win 11-0 over the Athletics. Offense was beaming. Torkelson sets the tone with a 2 RBI double. He would add a third RBI later on today in tonight's game. The Athletics are shut out once again. Tigers have scored over 50 runs in their past, I think over 55 runs in their past 5 games. And only 4 games under 500 are 54 and 58 and are still within striking distance, but there are 5 teams still sitting in front of them for a AL wildcard position right now. So I personally just can't get my hopes up. I understand that you look at the standings, you look at what you have on the roster, you see that, there is possibility for some help to come along here pretty soon. The lineup is starting to turn over pretty nice with Torres and Baez, and Valencia adds 4 RBIs and 2 RBI doubles today. Montero throws 6 shutout innings. You have, the Tigers pitching staff doesn't allow a run. Again, it may not always have to look pretty. I know Tyler Holton only didn't even throw 10 pitches and got yanked before recording 3 outs in the 7th. But that's just the type of season it's been, is you really just, everybody has to have a short leash. You have to use your bullpen as a bullpen. And unfortunately, it's at the point where at the first sign of trouble, A.J. Hinch is just going to have to go and grab, like he did today, just going to go and have to grab a name like Tyler Holton after 9 pitches. But you really just can't take your chances, and especially after what happened in that Baltimore series with losing that 7-run lead, and that is your final stamp with Tarek Skubal being a Detroit Tiger. So unfortunate because, after sitting on it for a day, it really is, it sucks. It really just sucks at the end of it. That A, the Detroit Tigers did not have a winning product while Tarek Skubal was on the team. That B, that it's an acceptable return. I think that it's going to catch flack both ways, and MLB baseball has some very exaggerated takes, and people need to take a step back because if I'm not mistaken, we're only on August 2nd heading into August 3rd when this is posted, and the Dodgers are not currently playing in the World Series. The National League is still very stacked, and in terms of moves, I also just saw the Chicago Cubs picked up Kevin Gossman. So with Matt Boyd, Imanaga, and so on and so forth, they have added to depth to their rotation. So I think that the Atlanta Braves and the Milwaukee Brewers, if the Brewers get another shot this postseason, will be a lot better this time around than last postseason in the National League Championship Series after getting swept by the eventual champion Dodgers. But I think before, even I exaggerated a little bit, but even before all these baseball fans react, again, I live off of results and reality. Yes, the result was the Dodgers won the World Series last year, but they were also mere moments away from losing the World Series last year to Toronto Blue Jays, who just sold off one of their star pitchers from that World Series team. So it's a tough spot for the Tigers, and the positive side is that, yes, there is some positive still because you don't know what tomorrow or today will hold in terms of the 6 p.m. trade deadline. You hope that I really do hope, and I mean, that Casey Mize and Gleyber Torres are flipped for some form of value. But if you have to, again, trust the executives in this position that they're the ones getting paid the money to be in the front office, be in the scouting, look for the players they want out of different organizations and minor league systems. And that's what I take from the Tarek Skubal trade, is those were the 3 players that the organization was okay receiving. And it was more than likely we don't know what other offers were truly out there. You can speculate, you can read reports, but unless you were in that room with Scott Harris and the Detroit Tigers front office, we do not know truly how much better of an offer was out there. And I think to receive 3 baseball players for 1 arm and not knowing, I mean, it's the Dodgers, so they're going to have the money to re-sign Skubal if they really want to re-sign Skubal. But at the end of the day, if you have to look at it through this lens, or at least how I'm looking at it through this lens, is that if the Dodgers end up not winning the World Series this year, I see that as a win for the Tigers. Sorry. I see that as a win for the Tigers. I really do. I think that if you sit back and look back at the end of the year and the Dodgers aren't World Series champions and the Tigers are somehow able to use even 2 out of the 3 names to help make this team better for the future, if Zaire Hope ends up being a star corner right fielder for the Tigers to add to Max Clark and Riley Green, I think a lot of Tiger fans have that on the forefront of their mind right now, and as they should, because that is the point of making a blockbuster trade as you just made for Tarek Skubal. So the third, River Ryan, I think will be the first out of the 3 names to make a major league appearance, and I think that you can take any help you can get in terms of pitching and in terms of controlled pitching like you do have in River Ryan. Now, you don't know what Brady Smith holds. He's more, I believe he is a 21-year-old right-handed pitcher. He still needs to log some innings. I'm happy that you get another arm into the system, but he has to be, you can go down the list and go and evaluate the type of player he is now or evaluate the stats he's had in the minor leagues, but at the end of the day, the focus should be when he makes it to the major league roster, is he an effective major league relief arm, starting arm, or just in general, is he impacting your roster in a positive way? That's it. That's all that it has to be looked at as you put a star around these 3 names. You say these are the 3 names that we felt were worth Tarek Skubal, the 2-time defending ERA and Cy Young Award winner out of the American League. That is ultimately on Scott Harris's shoulders. That is his responsibility, the front office's responsibility for if they pan out, if they don't pan out. But I know it's going to be a play on words here, but I do have high hopes for Hope. I do think that once he gets to the major league level, if you look at his 162 pace right now in the minor leagues, it is pretty stellar in terms of prospect. I get it is minor league baseball, and we've seen names like Colt Keith and Kerry Carpenter that have been monstrous coming through our system and into Toledo. But he immediately skyrockets, I believe, to the Tigers' number 1 or 2 prospect in the Tigers' farm system. Max Clark being number 1, but we'll soon get the prospect tag lifted if Max Clark continues to see outings and reps day in and day out at the major league level. So do the Tigers, at the end of the day, lose the best left-handed pitcher right now in Major League Baseball? Yes, that is what a trade is. The trade-off is, though, you make your farm system better, and you traded him to get what could be one of your better prospects in return. You're going to have a major league ready 27-year-old arm coming off of Tommy John surgery and River Ryan. I think that between now, August 3rd, when this podcast is posted and going to be, put out, I think between now and the end of September, for the next 2 months, you have to log how many major league innings can River Ryan get you once he's fully healthy off the injured list, once he's through the minor leagues and on your major league roster. So that's where you have help, and I don't think Hope will make the major league roster in 2026 if there is baseball in 2027, because we truly do not know what the future holds for Major League Baseball and in terms of a lockout that may or may not be impending as we reach CBA negotiations moving into the off season. But what I do know is that the Detroit Tigers won a baseball game 11-0. There will be no baseball for the Tigers, I believe, or anybody with the deadline at 6 p.m. tomorrow. We'll break down and have more of a general Major League Baseball trade deadline talk. Kevin Gossman, Louis Castillo, Trevor Mailey, names that have been traded so far that I'm reading. And it will continue. There will be more names that are lifted and plucked off the table, but no other Detroit Tigers as of the moment of this being recorded have been traded. Gleyber Torres is a Detroit Tiger. Casey Mize is a Detroit Tiger. Kenley Jansen is a Detroit Tiger. The other 3 names that have mainly been circulated around in trade negotiations. So it will be interesting to see, because the positives is that the Tigers can still play very fun and meaningful baseball. They are still within 3 games mathematically and standings-wise, statistically, in the playoff picture and in the race. They do have 6 games at Comerica Park coming up this month against the Cleveland Guardians and the Chicago White Sox, the first and second place teams, two teams currently holding playoff positions, and also will begin in Seattle on on Tuesday night, a 3-game series against the Mariners, a team that is also directly in front of them and just beat the Minnesota Twins 7-6 in walk-off fashion today in Seattle. So still very interesting. I hope that I will be reacting to more Tigers trades as I record tomorrow night post trade deadline. What do you guys think? Personally, I'm okay with what the package is back for Tarek Skubal. Still have a lot of time for those prospects to play out, but it's going to be time's a ticking. I'm going to have a star by Brady Smith. I'm going to have a star next to River Ryan, and I'm going to have a star next to Zaire Hope, the same way that I had stars next to Franklin Perez, Daz Cameron, and Jake Rogers all the way back almost a decade ago at the trade deadline, losing Justin Verlander to the Houston Astros. So that is the number one hope that I really, as a supporter and fan of this franchise growing up, I really hope that it doesn't turn into a Justin Verlander 2.0 situation where Tarek Skubal is pitching in a World Series for a team not the Detroit Tigers and not the team that drafted him. And it's another Cy Young Award winner that unfortunately will not be throwing for the Detroit Tigers anymore. And that's what the reality is. Today was a good first step, and hey, hopefully the clubhouse realizes there is no more Tarek Skubal. There is no reliance on getting 6 to 7 shutout innings. And the one difference that I don't like making this type of comparison, but unfortunately it's just how I feel about the Tarek Skubal situation because I am in this boat. But to me, you need to be able to throw 100 to 125 plus pitches competitively for your baseball team. And whether you're worried about your future or not, Justin Verlander went through, just look at Justin Verlander's career and Max Scherzer's career. You can still pitch 100 to 120 pitches long term for the majority and middle and bulk of your career and still make it long term in this league. It's all about how you manner yourself, how you care about yourself, how much you're analyzing your throwing and your pitching, and how much stress you're really putting on your shoulder and your elbow, and you can really work together. I'm not going to go into a detailed explanation, but for me, it really does suck that whether it was a managerial decision, whether it was a health decision, or whether it just was as simple as they just didn't want Tarek Skubal for him or his future throwing 100 pitches. It was a bit frustrating that you couldn't get 8 to 9 innings consistently, 7, 8, 9 innings, because that was what Verlander brought to the table. Verlander was throwing there's always that clip of him in Cleveland throwing 102 on like his 103rd pitch of the game in the 8th inning. That is what the greats have. They have it for 8 to 9 innings. And you're not going to have him obviously pitch 15 innings in Game 5, but not being able, knowing that it's possibly your last game of the season, to not even hit 100 pitches in Seattle last season. I'm sorry. I believe that you should have. You can go and say you gave it your all, but shouldn't that you already be well enough conditioned to be giving it your all for 100 plus pitches? I just have a hard time swallowing that one, and ultimately I think that it's fine. It is what it is. In the reality, it's now set in. There is no more Tarek Skubal in a Detroit Tigers uniform, and whether that be for the better or for the worse, I think that I can accept it because right now it's trying to make the Tigers better for right now and beyond, and we will see. I think that you should, by the end of this month or beginning in the middle of September, we'll see River Ryan will be throwing innings for the Detroit Tigers, and you hope that it's in a positive manner. You hope that it makes a positive impact, knowing names like Justin Verlander and Jack Flaherty. I know Verlander hasn't really seen the mound and really hasn't seen the mound, but Jack Flaherty was a name that made multiple starts in this season, had a 2-year deal. I think it was $24 million over 2 seasons for 2026 and 2025 to come back into a Detroit Tigers uniform after being traded away in 2024 to the LA Dodgers and ended up making a World Series start for LA in that 2024 series against the Yankees. So What do you guys think about the Detroit Tigers and the Tarek Skubal news? Casey Mize and Gleyber Torres still Tigers as I am recording this before it gets posted. But for 54 and 58, 1-0 post Tarek Skubal trade. We shall see what the future holds. But I'm okay with it. I think that people are going to overreact and get upset about it. But we still have 2 months of regular season baseball to go before we hit the October and postseason. And it's a very, very, very competitive National League playoff picture. I think you have 3 or 4 teams that can truly compete for the National League pennant if things fall their way. I think the obvious 3, the Dodgers, the Braves, and the Brewers. But I seriously would not be surprised because of the starting pitching with Christopher Sanchez and Zach Wheeler if a team like the Phillies, led by Bryce Harper, led by Trey Turner, led by JT Realmuto in that offense, and Kyle Schwarber, if they're able to maybe make a run and avenge that National League Division Series loss last season to the LA Dodgers. So the Dodgers do get better, but again, they're not healthy. We're not going to see them at full strength. And until we begin the postseason, that's when I will begin to truly judge how good the Dodgers are and how many names do they really need. But there are multitudes of franchises, and I do understand. But that is how baseball, unfortunately, is designed and built, is by the owners and by the people who have the money. And the Dodgers have the money. The Yankees have the money. The Mets have and you see, money doesn't equal winning. You know, it works for the Dodgers because, for whatever reason, the baseball gods have gifted them as being the best franchise for however long now, and especially now the past 2.5 and going to be 3 seasons ongoing. But there are still competitive games to be played. The Toronto Blue Jays almost did beat them and almost stopped the repeat from happening last October. So you can't deny that. And I do think that whoever meets them in the championship series, it will be a 6 or 7 game series if teams are healthy and at full shape. But it just seems that for a rental, it just seems that teams were not willing to hand out the top-end prospects. And even I was one that once I started to look into the Dodgers prospects and saw the 1 through 20 and saw that 4 of their top 5 prospects were outfielders, and we got number 5 on that list, meaning that numbers 1, 2, and 3 were untouchables from the LA Dodgers. Maybe it truly was. That's where I sort of conclude that maybe it truly was the best offer that Scott Harris got at this deadline. And if that was the best offer, you take the best offer on the table. And the Dodgers, for yes, a neutral fan, it does suck because it doesn't really bat an eye for the Dodgers. They're still going to be the number 1 team in baseball with or without Tarek Skubal. But with them, it obviously is an additive. And I think that you are going to be facing possibly 6, 7, 8 to 9 innings of shutout baseball all postseason in that National League postseason picture. So your hope is that you can delay the Dodgers possibly out of the number 1 or 2 seed if you're the Brewers and the Braves, that maybe you can chase down record-wise to keep them into the wild card round at the 3 seed once again. But if they get that bye and they just have a 5-game divisional series and a 7-game championship series, it's going to be pick and choose. They could do 2-man rotations. You know, Skubal pitch half the game, Yamamoto second half, Snell pitches the first half, and Glasnow pitches the second half, Sasaki pitches the first half, and you know, whatever the case may be, you know, you can play almost, you know, video game type of stuff with mix and matching what you can do with that rotation. And it sounds like we're not too far off from seeing Edwin Diaz closer role back for that bullpen with already Tanner Scott and company. And the Dodgers, I did look at their roster and their depth chart. They are dealing with injuries, so it's not like the injury bug doesn't avoid the best team in baseball. But that is why they are the best team in baseball, is they can next man up, throw in whoever. And I think there was a lot of fans and media members that were surprised that Emmett Sheehan was not a part of that LA Dodgers trade. But I don't think I'm really shocked by it. And I think by now, growing up and almost for 2 decades with memory now to back up being a Detroit supporter, I'm not going to be surprised if it doesn't pan out. We've had draft picks not pan out. We've had trades not pan out. Heck, we've had draft picks that we've had to want to work out and succeed to the highest level and win championships not work out, just as a lot of fan bases have. But it's just another, another fork in the road as a fan that you lose an arm like Tarek Skubal, and I'm going to miss watching him go down and strike out 12, 13, 14 hitters. I believe he struck out 12 in over 7 1/3 against the Royals in the last start I was able to attend to, his second to last start as a Tiger. I was there on Sunday Night Baseball last year when he struck out 13 Twins. I was in Cleveland when he made his return from the IL this year, because you just knew, you had the vibe, you had the sense, and there was that one false report. It ended up being that there was a trade already in place during winter meetings for Skubal from the Dodgers. Who knows how far off it was from that December winter meeting trade to now. And you knew it was coming, but I don't think that, and you sort of do have to respect that they didn't let it linger on, and that there wasn't any false hope of them trying to make a theater of trying to possibly re-sign him in the offseason. We all knew what the real situation was, and the truth hurts sometimes, and the truth is the Tigers were not going to re-sign Tarek Skubal, and I think you saw the most you're going to get out of him. So that is what I have for you guys on Yapping About Sports today. Still on YouTube, still on Apple, and on Spotify for wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you again for listening. I will see you all again tomorrow or whenever the next episode will be recorded. More so reacting to all of the major trades. We'll be going mainly postseason teams and which teams I feel help themselves the best. Maybe some teams that did not pull the trigger on anybody. But ultimately, I will give you a full rundown, power ranking, reaction, the whole 9 yards on Major League Baseball tomorrow. So looking forward very much to that. On top of, obviously, hopefully, reacting to some more Detroit Tigers trades. But without further ado, thank you all again for listening to Yapping About Sports and now watching Yapping About Sports. Have a great rest of your day.